"He's not allowed in." That's what the guard said, while his hand pressed flat against my chest and the door to my wife's wake swung shut on my face by my own son's order. Have you ever been told you're not family at the very moment your heart is breaking? What would you do if the child you raised pointed you toward the exit while your wife's name trembled on your tongue? Argue in the doorway? Beg the people who watched you fall and claw your way back? Or stand there burning and wonder if maybe you deserved it? Can you imagine hearing strangers murmur, "Is that the husband?" while the man who shares your last name refuses to look up? Have you tasted that mix of flowers and shame, lilies and humiliation, while the words "he's not allowed in" ring like a sentence you can't appeal? If your son decided you were the reason his mother died, would you try to defend yourself in a hallway? Or would you let the story devour you in silence? I felt the old fear crack open like a fault line. Not just losing my wife, but losing my son, completely, publicly, finally. The fear that every mistake I ever made had led us here. That I was the villain in the movie of his life. That this would be the scene he'd replay whenever he needed a reason to keep hating me. And I'll be honest, I almost gave him one. My hand was already on the handle. I could have shoved through, made a scene, confirmed every ugly word anyone has ever said about me. Isn't that what people expect from the man the guard blocks, the one the whispers gather around? "Sir, step back." The guard didn't raise his voice, and that made it worse. No shouting, no chaos, just that calm certainty that I didn't belong in the room where my wife lay in her favorite blue dress. Do you know what it's like to be kept inches from the person you loved most? To feel your throat go raw while your own son refuses to hear you say goodbye? Have you ever seen a door close and thought, if I open it, I might lose him forever, but if I walk away, I might lose myself? Some part of me tried to bargain. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't get to be in there. Maybe this is the invoice for the years I can't take back. But then another thought hit just as hard. She would hate this. The woman who loved quiet choices and told the truth even when it made her voice shake. She would not want my last moment with her to be a tug of war with our son. So I stepped away from the door. I stood in a corridor lined with cheap carpet and sympathy pamphlets, and I let the humiliation burn through me instead of out of me. What would you do if your last goodbye was stolen by your own blood? If the person you loved most left you one fragile lifeline, would you dare to use it? That night, with my palms still trembling and her name still in my mouth, I made one call. The call I had promised I would only make if grief turns cruel. I didn't shout, I didn't plead. I dialed and I said the few words I was told to say, and then I waited in the parking lot with my forehead against the steering wheel, trying not to break apart where anyone could see me. And here's the part I didn't expect. Hours later, my phone lit up like a confession booth. 1 missed call, then 5, then 12, until the screen showed 43 calls. 43 calls spilling over with messages I couldn't bring myself to play. "Dad, please. I didn't know. Pick up." Have you ever wanted to answer and not answer at the same time? To forgive and to protect your own heart in the same breath? That night, with my palms still trembling and her name still in my mouth, my choice was made. Shove my way in and become the man they'd decided I was, or trust that one quiet call could carry her voice further than my anger ever could. I chose the call, and that's when everything began to change. Used to be the reason doors closed. 9 years ago, my wife slid my house key across the table and said, "Choose us or the bottle." I chose us, but choosing isn't the same as being trusted. I poured the bourbon down the sink, went to meetings, counted days, then months, then years. I brought my son Daniel to my 1-year chip, and he clapped with his hands, but not with his eyes. Because how do you clap for the dad who missed your 12th birthday, even if he's trying now? I kept trying anyway. Baseball games, late-night algebra, Sunday pancakes, stacking good days on top of old wreckage, hoping the tower would hold. It held for a while. Then the cancer came back. The first time, we beat it with a stubborn cocktail of hope and chemo. The second time, it came back with teeth. The doctor used words like aggressive and trial, and my wife listened the way she always did, quiet, steady, asking the questions I couldn't fit in my mouth. The numbers were cruel. The maybe was smaller than a nail fiking. She waited until the doctor left, then took my hand. "I want comfort, not a war I can't win," she whispered, and the room tilted. She was my medical proxy. I'd signed those papers the day we married because she said love should include the chores no one wants. I heard the request underneath her voice, "Honor me even if it breaks you open." She looked at me again. "Don't make Daniel carry the details. He'll hear DNR like you wrote do not love across my chart." She was right. Our son is a fighter. He wants a dragon to stab. The idea of comfort care would feel like I handed him a pillow and told him to suffocate hope. So she made me promise. We would tell him the truth. No chemo, home hospice, but not the paperwork that would turn grief into a courtroom. She said, "Let me spare him the signature. Let me be the one who tells him when the time comes." And then she did something I didn't know she'd planned. With our hospice nurse, Elaine, she recorded a voice memo and wrote a letter signed and witnessed with instructions as meticulous as the way she folded t-shirts. "If blame turned to cruelty, release this to my son, my family, and the funeral home." The envelope had my name on it. On the back, in her looping hand, one word: hydrangeas. That was the key word. If I ever spoke it to Elaine, she'd send the memo and the documents. A door only she could open from the other side. I didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. In those last weeks at home, Daniel would stand at the kitchen sink, gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping him from falling. "Why aren't we trying the trial?" he asked me late one night, voice rough with insomnia and hope. "Because it would hurt her more than help," I said, and watched his jaw set like concrete. He wanted me to argue with doctors, to storm rooms, to trade years off my life for a miracle on hers. I wanted that too. But choosing isn't the same as choosing the right thing. Choosing felt like betrayal, even when she squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Thank you for listening." The week before she died, she slid her wedding ring into my palm. "If they turn you out," she said, "no judgment, only tired certainty. Let me open the door." I didn't understand until the night of the wake, when understanding became a bruise. Here's where I made my quiet mistake. I thought my sobriety and devotion would speak for me, that Daniel would see the morphine and the soft music and understand I was keeping her safe, not giving up. But grief hears in the key of accusation. In the hospital, when a nurse asked me to confirm the DNR one last time, I nodded through tears, and Daniel walked in at the tail end, saw me agree to something he couldn't forgive. He didn't hear his mother's earlier, "Please, love, let me stop hurting." He heard me, the former drunk, granting permission to death. After she passed at home with sunlight on her cheek, we barely spoke, except in logistics. He arranged the wake. I didn't push because every sentence felt like a match near gasoline. The program proof he sent the family group chat didn't have my name on it. I told myself it was grief, not a verdict. But the morning of the wake, a family friend texted me, "Maybe come late, tensions are high," and my stomach sank like a stone. That envelope with hydrangeas sat in my desk. I had moved it 3 times and never opened it because I believed love could fix this without documents. I believed my son would see me the way she did. I believed wrong. And when the guard's palm met my chest, I finally understood what she meant about doors. I had kept her voice quiet to protect him. He turned me out to protect his pain. She had left me a way to bridge the gap without a shouting match in a hallway with lilies. All she asked was that I use it only if grief turned cruel. I prayed I would never need that word. Then Daniel looked past me like I was a stranger and said, "He's not allowed in." That was the moment the key word bloomed on my tongue. The funeral home smelled like lilies and lemon cleaner, and I swear the scent crawled under my collar like guilt.
On a table by the door, a guest book sat open beside a stack of programs that read "A Celebration of Life" in cheerful script. No mention of me anywhere on the inside. Just loving mother, beloved friend, as if a husband had been edited out of the equation. Daniel was 10 feet away, shoulders squared, speaking to the director like a man twice his age. He didn't look up when I stepped in from the drizzle. He didn't have to. He'd set the weather already. "Sir, he's not allowed in." The guard's palm met my chest, flat and impersonal, the way a door meets a frame. He didn't shove. Somehow that made it worse. No scene to blame later, just policy. My son's policy, played out with rental security and a neutral tone. "On whose order?" I asked, even though I knew. The guard tilted his head towards Daniel without moving his hand. "Family requested it." Family. As if I'd lost that word somewhere in a relapse and never found it again. Have you ever heard a word you thought belonged to you used like a fence? I tried to catch Daniel's eye, tried to find even a flinch that said he was wavering, that somewhere under his anger the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest during baseball games remembered me. He flipped a page in a binder. That tiny motion said everything. A family friend, Marla, my wife's cousin, slid up beside me, fingers light on my elbow. "Maybe come back in a bit," she whispered, the kind of whisper that pretends to be kind while it cuts. I bit back the line that wanted to jump out. It's awake, it's supposed to be tense, because sarcasm would only prove their point. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice level, the way my sponsor taught me when shame wants to shout. "I just want to see her." He turned half an inch, still not meeting my eyes. "You already did," he said, and the words landed like a gavel. The room swayed. He meant it home, in hospice, when she exhaled that thin last breath, and I kissed her temple. But that wasn't this. This was the ritual, the part where you stand in line and pretend there's a script that makes loss polite. This was the part where a man is supposed to sit in the front row, not the parking lot. "Sir, step back," the guard said, with the patient voice of a man paid by the hour. Behind him, the slideshow flickered. A photo of my wife in her favorite blue dress, chin lifted, eyes bright. The sound of her laughter lived in that picture. I felt it like a punch. What would you do if your last look at the love of your life was blocked by a man in a rented blazer while your own son kept his gaze iron flat to the page? Would you push through and let your grief choose for you? Would you make news at your wife's wake? I could feel the old heat climb my throat, that reckless flare that ruins things in a lightning flash. People were watching. They do at moments like this. I heard a whisper, "Is that the husband?" And then another, lower. I heard he. The sentence trailed off the way gossip does when the person it's about is within arm's reach. My ring finger felt naked. I remembered the weight of her ring in my palm, the way she pressed it there like a key. My hand found the doorknob anyway. Old reflex. One twist, one shove, and I'd be at her side. One twist, and I'd become the man my son needed me to be to justify the guard. I could already see how the story would be told. He couldn't even behave at the wake. He always makes it about him. The part of me that wants to defend itself almost loves a script like that. It's easy. You don't have to hold your pain still. You just let it run. "Don't," Marla breathed. "Please." I looked past the guard, past the polished oak of the casket, and saw the spray of hydrangeas tucked beside the lilies. Hydrangeas. The word pulsed behind my teeth. If blame turns cruel. My wife had known this room without ever seeing it. She'd known how Daniel's grief would armor up and try to push me to the edges of our shared life. She'd known I would want to bang on the door until it opened. She left me something else instead. "Daniel," I tried one more time, my voice breaking like a thin stick. "Let me say goodbye." His jaw clenched so tight I could hear the grind. "You said you already bid," he repeated, louder, and a few heads turned. If I argued, that would be the moment burned into everyone's memory of her wake. Not her laughter on the slideshow, not the stories about the way she sent cards to cousins she barely knew, but me and my son at war. Have you ever realized in one breath that the only way to honor the person you love is to swallow the thing that's about to explode out of you? I let go of the doorknob. The guard's hand fell away like a permission slip I didn't need anymore. I stepped back. The end of her perfume drifted through the doorway as someone entered, a trace she'd worn for years, soft and floral. It cut me open and stitched me up in the same breath. "I'll be outside," I said, to no one in particular, and everyone who needed to hear I wasn't going to light the room on fire. I walked down the corridor past the wall of sympathy brochures, past a water cooler buzzing like a tired insect. The evening air slapped my cheeks damp, honest. In the parking lot, I leaned my forehead to the steering wheel and let the shaking come. I wasn't leaving her. I was leaving the version of me who solves pain with noise. Do you know how hard it is to choose quiet when everything in you is howling? The keyword sat on my tongue like a seed casing ready to split. Hydrangeas. I scrolled to Elaine's number, the hospice nurse who had looked me in the eye more tenderly than some family ever had. Her name blinked on the screen. For a long second, I stared at the green call button and listened to the beat in my temple, trying to decide if using my wife's lifeline was honoring her or betraying my son. Somewhere behind me, the chapel door sighed open. Footsteps paused, then retreated. Time thinned to a single point. One call could turn this night. One call could change the story. I closed my eyes, felt her ring press a crescent into my palm, and opened my mouth.
Elaine answered on the second ring, the hum of a quiet house behind her. "Are you safe?" she asked, like a person who understands grief can be a dangerous neighborhood. "I am," I said, "but I'm standing outside my wife's wake. Daniel hired security." Silence pooled between us. Then she said the one sentence that mattered. "Do you want to use the word?" Have you ever held a single word like a fuse between your teeth, knowing once you bite down you can't unbite it? I closed my eyes and saw hydrangeas blooming along our fence, the way she loved them, stubborn, showy, honest about what the soil holds. "Hydrangeas," I said. The line went quiet again. Then came the soft click of decisions happening. "All right," Elaine breathed. "You understand what this releases. The memo, the letter, the funeral instructions. I'll send the packet to Daniel, to the director, and to the pastor. Once it's out, there's no way to take it back." "I know," I said, even though a part of me didn't. A part of me wanted to rewind to the doorway and make a different movie. But movies lie about doors. They open because a hero pushes. In real life, the right doors open because someone loved you enough to leave a key. She verified what she needed to. Names, dates, the last 4 digits I'd memorized the day we got married because she said, "If I forget, you'll remember for me." Then Elaine asked the final time, "Are you sure this is grief turning cruel?" I thought of Daniel's voice, loud enough for a few heads to turn. "You already said goodbye." I thought of the guard's hand on my chest while her perfume slipped past him and reached me anyway. "Yes," I whispered. "She wouldn't want this." "Check your email," Elaine said. "I'm sending you a copy." A second later, ping, then another. Subject line, "From Margaret for Daniel." Subject line, "Service instructions, legally binding." Subject line, "To funeral director, request for immediate update." My thumb hovered over the first one like it might burn me. I opened it. Her voice memo was attached, a 38-second file named with her neat, teacherly precision, "For my boys, final.mp4. I pressed play. "Daniel, sweet boy." Her voice filled the car, small and clear and alive in that impossible way recordings make the dead feel. I flinched like I'd been touched. "Don't make anger turn you cruel. Stand with him tomorrow. Let love be louder than blame." I stopped it there because my chest felt like something had torn and was trying to stitch itself mid-tear. I didn't need the rest yet. I needed air. I needed to swallow down the cry clawing up my throat so I wouldn't scare the couple walking past to their car with red eyes and styrofoam cups. Texts started coming in as the emails flew. Elaine, sent to Daniel, sent to the director. Pastor confirmed receipt.
Another ping, an auto-reply from the funeral home system acknowledging updated legal documentation received, co-planner status noted. I pictured the director, brows up, reading a woman's last requests. Hymn list, the poem she wanted, the front row seat reserved for my husband who stayed. She had anticipated her son's storm and built a lighthouse anyway. What would he do when her voice landed in his grief like a hand on his cheek? Would he throw the phone? Would he let the truth do its work before my unperfect voice tried to fix anything? I closed my eyes, pressed the phone face down on my thigh, and counted my breaths the way I was taught in the first year I crawled back to myself. Somewhere between 6 and 7, the call came again, and that's when the night began to turn.
The first call I let ring. Then the second. By the fifth, my thumb hovered over the answer button like a man standing at the edge of a dock, not sure if the water will save or shock. Have you ever wanted to say yes and no at the same time? To accept an apology and also refuse to let it erase what it needs to teach? I watched his name bloom and disappear across my screen until I couldn't keep count. Then I did keep count, because numbers make chaos feel like order. 12, 19, 27. By midnight, 43 missed calls. My voicemail indicator barked red like a wound. I listened to one message, then another. Dad, please, I didn't know. Elaine sent, Mom, I didn't know. Pick up, please pick up. Each one cracked something in me and tried to pour a fix into it, but some breaks aren't ready for glue. Not yet. I typed, I'll call you in the morning. I erased it. I held her ring in my fist until it printed a crescent on my skin and decided the truth had just started doing its work. I wasn't going to trample it with my panic to make things right overnight. You can't fix a door frame when the door is still swinging. At 7:13 a.m., the funeral home emailed, Per Ms. L's instructions, we will begin with a recording. Reserved seating updated. Please arrive by 9:30. Attached, again, the legal note co-naming me as planner. I read it twice. Then I showered like a man scrubbing off a night he couldn't sleep through, put on the suit she loved because she said it made my shoulders look like I could carry a house, and drove back to the place where I'd been turned into a stranger. The same guard was there, but his posture had changed. He stepped aside before I reached him. Mr. L? The director himself appeared with a thin, careful smile people use when they realize they misread the story. Your seat is ready. The words hit me soft and sharp at once. Ready, like all of this had been waiting just on the other side of a word only she knew to give me. Inside, the murmurs tapered to a low tide as I walked up the aisle. Hydrangeas, hers, tucked among the lilies exactly where she'd asked for them. A small white card on the front pew, reserved for my husband. I didn't sit yet. I turned, scanning for Daniel. He stood by the projector, chin high, eyes red-rimmed and raw. Our gazes met and slid off each other like rain off glass. He took one step towards me and stopped, palms open, empty. The pastor cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said, voice carrying with that church-trained quiet power, Margaret asked to speak for herself. Have you ever heard a room inhale all at once? He pressed play. Her voice poured out like light through a cracked door. Daniel, sweet boy. People stilled. Your father honored me. He did not let me go. He let me stop hurting. Don't make anger turn you cruel. Stand with him tomorrow. Let love be louder than blame. There was more, thanks and memories and a joke about my terrible singing, but I didn't hear it. All I could hear was that one sentence pounding like surf. He did not let me go. He let me stop hurting. A sound ruptured in the second row, half sob, half apology. Daniel folded like a bridge sags under too much weight and then suddenly remembers how to hold. His hands shook at his sides like they wanted to fly towards me and didn't know how. The projector screen flickered to a photo of her in the blue dress, chin lifted, eyes bright, the exact version of her I'd seen through the doorway yesterday when the guard's hand was my wall. The pastor looked at me, not performative, not grand, just a small nod that said, "This is your place." I stepped forward. The aisle felt longer than it had any right to be, like some part of me wanted to walk the whole length of our marriage again, every misstep, every recovery, ending here. When I reached the front, my knees almost missed the pew, so I let gravity put me down. I didn't look back to see if anyone approved or disapproved or took notes for later. I looked at her. The casket wood held the afternoon light like it remembered what trees are for. Have you ever felt relief and ache hit at the same time, like a door unlocking and the room beyond is the one where your heart lives, but the floor is still wet from last night's storm? I could feel Daniel's stare burning twin holes in the side of my suit. I didn't turn. Not yet. He needed to sit with his mother's voice the way I had sat with the door. The pastor began the hymn she chose. People sang through tears and brave faces. I mouthed the words because singing would have turned into keening, and she would have teased me for upstaging the music. When the hymn ended, footsteps approached. I didn't need to know whose they were. The rhythm of them has been in my life since I carried him out of a delivery room swaddled like a burrito. He stopped at the end of the pew. The air around us tightened like a held breath. "Dad," he said, not loud, not sure, like a boy testing ice. One word, smaller than all the ones he'd thrown at me at the doorway, bigger than any of the 43 pleas on my phone. What do you do when the person who locked you out stands inside the room you both belong to and reaches for a door only you can finish opening? I didn't answer. Not yet. The eulogy was about to begin. The pastor raised his hand. Daniel's fingers twitched like they wanted to take mine, then withdrew. He slid into the pew behind me, close enough that I could feel the tremor of his breath on my neck every time the word "mother" was spoken. The service moved forward steady and sure, the way she asked it to. Every note, every reading, every laugh through tears was a line she had drawn so we wouldn't scribble over each other out of fear. And even as my chest unclenched at the sound of her voice setting the room right, a truth settled just as heavy. The call changed everything, but not the thing I couldn't get back. You can update a program, you can reserve a seat, you can let love be louder than blame, but you can't unring "he's not allowed in." When the final prayer ended, the room exhaled. Chairs scraped. People shifted. I stood, finally turned and looked at my son full on. His face was streaked, his mouth working around words that hadn't chosen their order yet. He reached out, stopped, reached again. The whole room seemed to tilt towards us, like a spectator at a tightrope, waiting to see if we'd fall or find balance. That's where we were when the director opened the side doors to the sunlight and the world pressed its warm hand against our cold shoulders, caught between what we couldn't undo and what we might still build, one careful step at a time.
After the service, the aisle turned into a river of hands and murmurs. Beautiful service. She was a light. And through that, Daniel cut straight towards me like a man swimming upstream. "Dad," he started, voice shredded. I held up my hand, not to punish, to protect the thin bridge we'd just rebuilt. "I will talk," I said, steady as I could. "Just not here, not today." His mouth opened on a rush of apologies that wanted a place to land. I shook my head, gentle. "Your mother made today gentle on purpose. Let's not bruise it."
He swallowed, nodded once, twice, like agreeing hurt and helped at the same time. Outside, the sun had the nerve to be warm. My phone still wore last night's tally like a badge. A new text sat below it, short and raw. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Please." I typed, "Tomorrow, 5 o'clock, the garden." I erased it. Then I sent it. He answered with a single word, "Okay." Grief made the next week elastic. Mornings that dragged, nights that snapped. I ate standing up. I slept in the wrong half of the bed as if leaving space could conjure her back. Sometimes I played the memo just to hear the way she said, "Sweet boy," even though those words weren't for me. I threaded her wedding ring on a thin chain and wore it under my shirt where it warmed against my chest like a small sun I could carry. I didn't listen to the voicemails, not because I wanted to punish him, because I wanted our first real conversation to happen face to face, where truth could see what it was doing to us. On the 7th day, I went to her garden with a flat of hydrangeas in the back seat and 2 trowels clacking like nervous teeth. Daniel was already there, hands shoved into his jacket, pockets fixed on the patch of soil she'd coaxed into color for years. He looked like the boy who used to crouch beside her and ask 1,000 questions about worms and roots. "You brought them," he said, voice small with relief and something like fear. "She wanted them here," I said. We knelt without another word, and the dirt gave way the way it always had for her. Soft where she'd worked it, stubborn where she hadn't. We planted in silence until silence became too loud. He set his trowel down. "I was cruel," he said, not as a plea, not as a defense, as a fact he had finally stopped running from. The words landed and settled, heavy and honest. I nodded. "You were." He flinched, then breathed. "I won't be your punishment," I added, the phrase I'd rehearsed in the car shaking a little as it came out. "But I won't be your target anymore." His shoulders collapsed, then squared. "I don't want you to be," he said. When I saw you nod about the DNR, it was like you were saying yes to losing her." He scrubbed at his face with his sleeve. "I walked in late. I missed her explaining. I filled the blank with blame." I pulled the folded copy of her letter from my jacket, creased from rereads, soft at the edges like something loved. He took it with both hands, careful. We sat on the low brick border and read it again together, her voice in ink. "I chose comfort. Your father honored me. Do not make anger turn you cruel." His tears fell onto her signature and bled it a little, as if even on paper she could soften. "What do we do now?" he asked, like a boy asking how to fix a broken toy, like a man asking how to fix what a night shattered. "We set rules," I said, "because love without them turns into something we both regret." I ticked them off not like laws but like lifelines. If you think the worst of me, call me before you decide. If one of us goes too far, we say hydrangeas and take a breath. No more doorways becoming battlegrounds. We get help when we need it. He nodded at each one like a swimmer finding footholds. "Elaine mentioned a grief group," he said. "I could go." "I'll go with you," I said, and watched surprise tilt his mouth into something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't not one either. We went back to digging. At one stubborn patch, our trowels clinked together and we both laughed, one startled syllable that felt like a bird testing its wings. "Dad," he said, and the word didn't catch on anything sharp. It slid out clean and found its place between us. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for it to land until it landed. We watered the last plant and stood back. The hydrangeas looked ridiculous and brave, small soldiers at attention in a battlefield of empty soil, promising a future they had no way to guarantee. "She'd say we planted them too close," Daniel muttered, wiping his nose with the back of his hand like he was 12 again. "She'd be right," I said. "We'll move them if they crowd each other." I let the unspoken sit there. We'll move, adjust, make room, when we crowd each other too. Before he left, Daniel reached for the chain at my collarbone. "Is that her ring?" I said. He touched it with the tip of one finger, reverent. "Keep it there," he whispered.
then cleared his throat. And, I called the guard from the wake. I apologized. Something unknotted in me I hadn't noticed was tight. Thank you, I said. He looked at the hydrangeas. I'll come by Saturday? Saturday, I agreed. As he walked down the path, he glanced back, anxiety flickering in his eyes like a porch light. Are we okay? He asked. I considered the garden, the raw dirt, the small, brave blooms. We're not finished, I said, but we're finally starting the right thing. He nodded, turned, and went. The gate clicked shut with the softest sound, a closure that wasn't an ending. I stood alone in her quiet, in our quiet, the ring warm against my skin, and listened to the garden breathing around the promise we'd just planted.
That evening, after Daniel left, I stood in the garden with the hose arcing a thin rainbow over the new hydrangeas. The dirt drank like it hadn't realized how thirsty it was. Her ring warmed against my chest, a small sun tucked under cotton. Have you ever noticed how hydrangeas change color depending on the soil? Blue in acid, pink in alkaline? They tell the truth about what they're rooted in. Grief does that too. It stains everything the color of what's underneath. Blame, love, fear, hope. Last night, my fear said, kick down the door. My shame said, prove you deserve a seat. But love, hers, the kind that plans hymns and passwords from a hospital bed, handed me a key instead. A single word, hydrangeas. I used it, and her voice crossed a room that would have eaten us alive. It didn't erase the bruise of he's not allowed in. Nothing will. Some moments you can't get back. 43 missed calls can't rewind a hallway where a father pressed his palm to a door and decided not to become a storm. What would you have done? Answered on the first ring and tried to weld a broken night into a cleaner story? Or let the truth settle before adding your own shaky apology to the pile? I didn't answer. Not that night. For him, it was already too late to fix that particular cruelty at his mother's wake. But morning still came. The pastor pressed play. A recorded mercy did what two living men couldn't without breaking something. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't forcing a door open. It's trusting the voice that left you the key. I keep thinking about the way Daniel said "Dad" at the service, the way it almost didn't make it out and then did, about the feel of his fingertip on the ring at my collarbone, like it was blessing something that didn't need permission, about the rules we set in the dirt between us. Call before you decide. Say hydrangeas when our tempers climb. Get help. No more doorways turned into battlefields. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're guardrails you put up because you finally want to arrive somewhere worth staying. Grief wants a villain. It's simpler that way. It points at the nearest warm body and says, you did this. Love looks for the truth, even when the truth is complicated and quiet and hurts in a cleaner way. My wife knew both. She knew our son would need a dragon to stab and might pick me. She knew I would want to fix it with noise. She left us a way to choose each other without destroying what was left. I wish I could give you a perfect ending, that he and I walked out of the church hand in hand, that the first apology filled the crack completely. That's not what happened. What happened is better and braver. We planted something small and chose to water it. We said the hard words without making them weapons. We left room to move the plants if they crowd each other. We decided to let her voice guide us when ours shake. I still play the memo sometimes, but not as a crutch, as a compass. He did not let me go. He let me stop hurting. That line is stitched into me now. It reminds me that love doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like listening. Sometimes it looks like one late-night call that changes the way a morning begins. and sometimes it looks like two men, raw and clumsy, on their knees in a garden, agreeing that if blame turns cruel, we'll say a flower's name and start again. I can't unring last night. I can't unhear he's not allowed in. But I can choose over and over the key she left instead of the door I might have broken. And when my phone lights up next time, not with 43 pleas, but with one honest try, I can answer it as the man she believed I could be, standing on soil that finally tells the truth.
Have you ever noticed how the house gets louder when you're finally quiet enough to hear it? The old pipes sighed. The fridge hummed its small, boring song. Somewhere in the yard, a moth tapped the glass, stubborn and gentle. I pressed the ring warm against my collarbone and said a thank you I hoped could cross a room even a recording couldn't. She'd left us a way through. We were taking it. One careful step, one honest word, one call we answer before it's too late for the day we're in.
3 months later, the hydrangeas finally decided what color to be. The ones near the fence blued up like a bruise fading. The ones by the brick path flushed pink like a shy apology. I watered them in the evening the way she used to, slow arcs that made rainbows if the sun hit just right. The ring at my collar stayed warm against my skin, a habit now, as natural as checking the locks at night, as certain as the way her voice lives in the space between thoughts. Daniel pulled up and leaned on the gate, not quite coming in, not quite staying out. He said, "They're taking." He nodded at the blooms. She'd be bossy about pruning. I smiled. She'd be right. He stepped into the garden like someone entering a church they haven't decided to belong to yet. We crouched by the row nearest the path, considering a plant that had sprawled a little too proud for its roots. "Move it?" he asked. "We could," I said, and heard the edge in my own voice, a tiny flare of I had a plan. He glanced up, caught it, and said softly, "Hydrangeas." One word, our truce flag. The edge dissolved. "Ah, you're right," I said. "Let's shift it." So we did. Palms in the dirt, passing the root ball between us like a fragile secret. We listened for a sound soil makes when it accepts something, less of a thud, more of a sigh. We listened for it. We heard it. "Groups at 7, he said, brushing dirt from his knees. "Still coming?" I nodded. We'd sat in that circle twice now, passing tissues and stories. The first time, he spoke about the doorway at the wake without saying my name, like the story wasn't ready to hold both of us. The second time, he said, "Father," and flinched once, then didn't. We were learning how to say the hard parts out loud without turning them into weapons. On the way to the church basement, he drove. He fiddled with the radio and landed on a station she used to hum along to. Soft rock, earnest, and a little embarrassing. We let it play. In the parking lot, he didn't reach for the door right away. "I keep replaying it," he said, his eyes on the windshield wipers at rest. "The guard's hand, your face. I hate that I made that real." I swallowed and took the blame I still carried out of my pocket for a second, just to look at it in the light. "We both made things real we wish we didn't," I said. "You made a door. I made silence. We're changing both." Inside, the room smelled like coffee and furniture polish. Folded chairs, a circle, the standard issue for feelings. A woman who'd lost her sister talked about the way people avoid her in the grocery store. A man said he found his wife's scarf in a coat pocket, and it smelled of her shampoo and ruined him in the cereal aisle. When our turn came, Daniel said, "My mom left us a message. It saved us from ourselves." Heads nodded around the circle like wheat in a light wind. I said, "She taught us to use keys, not fists." Heads nodded again. Nobody told us it was all fine now. They just made space for the truth to sit between us without either of us flinching. After group, we walked the long way back to the car because the evening was soft, and the town was kind to us that night. At the corner, a couple argued, sharp, fast.
the kind of heat that leaves scorch marks you don't see until morning. We both went quiet, listening to what we'd almost sounded like forever. "Thanks for not answering," he said suddenly, and I looked at him because it was not the gratitude I expected. That night, the 43 calls, I needed to sit with Mom's voice before I could hear yours. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding since the first missed call. "I wanted to," I admitted, "on the first ring, and the 5th, and the 39th. He huffed a laugh. 39 was a particularly desperate one. At home, the house greeted me with its usual quiet. I set my keys in the bowl she'd insisted on putting near the door, because otherwise we'd lose our heads every morning with our keys. The hydrangeas were moon pale in the yard. I made tea badly and burned my tongue like always. When I finally sat, my phone buzzed. Daniel. Late. The kind of late that carried danger. I answered on the first ring. "Dad?" he said, his voice thin with something I couldn't place. "I had a dream she was asking me to find her coat before we left for church, and I couldn't. I woke up so angry at you again, and then it passed, and now I'm just sad." I didn't fill the quiet. I stayed. "Me too," I said, and we let the line be a small bridge we stood on, looking down at the water we weren't jumping into tonight. "Tell me something good about her," he said, like a child asking for a story at bedtime. I told him about the time she labeled every spice jar in our cabinet because she said grief makes people add too much cinnamon to everything, and she wanted to spare us that particular mistake. He snorted. "She was right," he said. "You add too much cinnamon." "I do," I agreed. We sat with that tiny laugh like it was a candle we'd cupped our hands around. Before we hung up, he said, "Hydrangeas," and I smiled into the dark, understanding. "Hydrangeas," I echoed, "are packed to step back when we step on each other's pain." After the call, I stood at the window and watched the blooms breathe in the night. I thought about doors and keys and how some debts can't be paid back, only forward. I couldn't give him back the wake. He couldn't give me back the doorway. But we could give each other this. A late-night call answered, a word that lowers shoulders, a garden willing to be replanted when we crowd each other. Week after we planted the hydrangeas, I finally pressed my thumb to the red badge on my phone and opened the voicemails that night. Have you ever put off listening to something because you're afraid it will rewrite you? I sat on the back steps where the boards creak like old bones, the garden breathing faintly in the dusk, and I braced myself for the shape of my son's desperation. Message 1 was clipped, all edges. "Pick up." No hello, no dad, just a command said like a prayer. 2 minutes later, another. Elaine sent, "Mom, just please." The background sounded like the chapel hall, those carpeted footsteps that swallow anger and make it come out strangled. By message 7, his voice hitched on the word mom, and I had to pause because mine did too. By message 12, he'd started saying dad again, like the word had returned to him one syllable at a time. Have you ever listened to someone learn how to repent out loud? It doesn't happen clean. He circled the same patch of apology like a man lost on familiar streets. "I didn't know. I thought you... I was wrong. Please answer." He kept saying please like he was trying to tunnel through the night using only that word. At 19, he cracked. "I told them you weren't family." The sentence fell out, and then he chased it with, "I didn't mean it. I mean, I meant it then. I didn't mean it now." He breathed like he'd run a mile and ended up exactly where he started. Behind him, a door hummed shut. He cursed under his breath, the way I used to when a wrench slipped and blood came fast. Somewhere in the mid-30s, his voice went small, almost boy again. "Dad, I can't fix the doorway. I can't. I'm sorry. I need you to come back tomorrow. Please let me make it right." I paused the playback there and stared into the dark where the hydrangeas made lumpy shadows. Have you ever noticed how shadows are honest about shape, but not about color? They tell you what's there, not what it's made of. Those calls were like that. They told me the outline of his fear. The color had to come later, in a garden with dirt under our nails. Message 39 was the one that gave me vertigo. He said, "If you don't pick up, I'll understand." His voice frayed and steady at the same time. "I don't deserve it. I just need you to know I'm listening to Mom say you didn't let her go, you let her stop hurting. And I'm trying to be the kind of son who hears that whole sentence." He didn't beg, he didn't bargain. He built a small, dignified raft out of the words he had left and set it on whatever water was between us. The last one, 43, arrived at 2:11 a.m. He sounded emptied out and simple, like a room after the chairs are stacked. "Dad, I'm going to sleep, or try. I'll be at the church at 9. If you hate me, I get it. If you come, I'll make room." I let that one ring in my head until my pulse matched its metronome. What would you do with that line? If you hate me, I get it. Would you hurry to erase it? Or would you hold it a second and honor the fact that your child finally understood hate isn't the currency he's allowed to spend on you anymore? I didn't save all the messages. That would have turned the night into a museum I'd wander every time I needed to punish us both. I deleted them one by one, not like throwing stones into water, but like setting down bricks I'd been carrying in the wrong weather. When I reached 39, I hesitated. That one I kept, not as a trophy for his remorse or a receipt for my restraint, but as a compass for the day we lose our footing again. Because we will. That's not doom, that's people. I texted him, "Listening now." He wrote back, too fast for a man at work in the middle of the afternoon. "Aren't they awful?" I typed, "They're true." He sent a pause I could feel through the screen. 3 dots, gone, 3 dots again. Then, "Do you hate me?" I sent, "I don't. But that night, I hated what grief made you do." "Hydrangeas," he answered with a single blue heart. I don't think I've ever been so grateful for a cartoon. Later, on a nothing special Tuesday, we sat at the kitchen table you can still see my first-year sobriety chips on if the light hits right. He asked, "Why didn't you answer, really?" People think the answer is punishment. It wasn't. "Because your mom had just said the truest thing in the room," I told him, and I knew if I rushed in with my own truth, defensive and bleeding, it would muffle hers. I needed you to hear her without me metal clanging in the doorway. He nodded, slow, the way a man nods when a piece clicks that didn't have a shape until it fit. He said, "I replayed it, the guard's hand, my voice. I don't know how to live with that version of me." I said, "Better than living as him forever." He wiped his palms on his jeans. "Sometimes I want to go back just to unlock the door and tell you to come in, like it would fix everything. It would fix one thing, and we're fixing the others the way things actually get fixed, in pieces, without an audience." He stared at the grain of the table until his mouth bent. "I wish she could see us." "I think she arranged to," I said, and he didn't roll his eyes at the sentimentality because the truth was sitting right there in a neat folder on my phone, named with her teacherly precision, "For my boys, final." That night after he left, I played 39 again, just once, and then I put my phone face down and went outside. The hydrangeas rustled, pink and blue, honest about the soil beneath them. "We're getting there," I told the dark, like it was a person who cared. The porch bulb hummed its little electric hymn. Somewhere a dog barked the same complaint to the moon it barks every night. Have you ever felt the world go on being ordinary right when you needed it to be ordinary? It's a mercy, that kind of boredom. Here's what I know now that I didn't at the doorway. Some apologies have to wait their turn. Some truths need quiet to be heard at their full volume. And some nights really are too late to undo, to unsay, to unslam. But morning still arrives with its soft insistence. A reserved seat, a recording that doesn't tremble, a son who tries the word dad on again and finds it still fits. I set an alarm on my phone, not for meetings or pills or water the flowers, though I still forget and the leaves tell me, but for the date 1 year from the day of the wake. It just says, hydrangeas. Not to dredge the hurt, to remind me we planted something and promised not to stop tending it when it got inconvenient. If grief turns cruel, we say the word and step back. If love gets loud enough, we step forward again. Before bed, I slid the chain over my head and laid her ring in the little ceramic dish she made in a pottery class and declared charmingly lopsided. The gold winked like it got the joke. "Thank you," I said, to nobody, and to her, to the nurse who answered on the second ring, to the version of me who chose a call over a fight, to the son who learned to apologize where other people could hear it and where they couldn't. The house settled. The garden held its breath. My phone lay quiet for once. And when it finally buzzed, just once, at 10:03 p.m., I answered on the first ring.